joining us as he does each and every Wednesday all year long on the video stream at 973 ESPN on YouTube and Twitter. That is Dave Weinberg for another edition of Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. First, welcome back from your glorious trip down to South Carolina.
Oh, thanks very much. You had a lot of fun. It was a good time.
So, obviously, this is the time of year that we are really getting ready for football season. Last weekend was the first big weekend of college football. This week leads up to the NFL season. I want to ask you, just big picture, what is a storyline with this football season that stands out to you the most?
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. Just from a local standpoint, I guess everybody's interested in how the Eagles are going to do. I mean, the opinions seem to vary from, 3 or 4 wins all the way up to challenging for the division title and maybe even winning a game or two in the playoffs. So, mainly just wondering, what's going to happen with a new coaching staff, some people coming back from injuries, some additions that they've had, a lot of question marks, but there's a lot of strengths. Offensive, defensive line, as we talked about, are as good as it gets. So I'm just anxious and curious to see how it all comes together come Sunday.
You mentioned the offensive and defensive lines. Brian Balding was on the Sports Patch with Mike Gill earlier today, and he was very, very, very specific in his praise of what this offensive line should be able to do. He went as far to say that if they're not a top 3 to 5 offensive line, that it's a disappointment. So, what do you think of this offensive line going into this season?
Well, potentially very good, but they've been riddled by injuries for a number of years now, and they have to stay healthy, and that's a big question mark. I mean, Lane Johnson's as good as it gets as a right tackle, but he's been battling injuries for the last couple of years. I mean, he had a pretty serious ankle injury last year. Brandon Brooks has been the same thing. He's been spent more time on the bench than he has on the field. Jason Kelsey's not getting any younger. And I still think the jury's out on Jordan Mailata. I mean, I know he had a very good preseason and a solid training camp, but there's that lack of experience, and I'm not so sure if it's going to hold up through an entire 16-game season. He had a little bit of inconsistency last year. I thought he had some good games, had some not so good games. So, but the potential is certainly there for them to be an elite offensive line.
With that being said, do you think because there are people out there you mentioned, they had different opinions about the Eagles this season.
I know you do too. Go ahead.
well, listen, we all do. But to me, I tend to think that if you have a good offensive line, you can be a good team because that's where the game starts. But there's a lot of people out there who all they say is, Jalen Hurts this. They only won 4 games last season. They don't want to factor in the offensive line at all. Why do you think that people who are anti when it comes to the Eagles playing well this year are so intent on not acknowledging what could be with the Eagles' offensive and defensive lines?
Hey, that's a good question. I mean, as you know, and as we talked about frequently, it all starts in the trenches. As you mentioned, the Eagles, they've been known to build from the inside out, and they're very gung-ho on making sure that their offensive and defensive lines are the strength and the core of the football team. And I don't really know what the negativity would be. I mean, there are obviously certain question marks outside the offensive line. No one knows if Jalen Hurts is really going to prove to be the leader and the elite quarterback that I think he has the potential to be. Wide receiving core, definitely unproven. Still have some question marks up and down the lineup that would make you wonder if they're going to be very successful this year. However, like you said, with their offensive and defensive lines being, pretty solid, very solid, bordering on elite, I think that bodes well for them this season. And it's just, as long as they're healthy, of course.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on Game Day for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Dave, I mentioned before you came on, my big concern for this game coming up has been consistently the Rodney McLeod situation. Because I understand, okay, he's limited at practice, he's on the field.
Right.
But that knee brace is a massive knee brace. You got to have that big of a knee brace on and you're still limited at practice. and then Darius Slay insinuated that he might not be able to go, Rodney, this Sunday. I'm concerned what this Eagles secondary is going to look like without him out there, because I understand Marcus Epps looked good in joint practices, but there's a guy on the other side in Atlanta named Kyle Pitts.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had to see Marcus Epps deal with Kyle Pitts, I know who's going to win that matchup, Dave.
Right. Same thing with Rodney McLeod for that matter, yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, Rodney's not all the way back from that knee injury, and that's a serious matchup problem for the Eagles. When you talk about Kyle Pitts, a rookie from Florida, Philly guy, by the way, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I wonder if him and Matt Ryan were hanging around in North Wildwood this summer. I don't know, because Matt has a house down here, by the way.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's a major concern. That's one of the matchups that they're really going to have to deal with. I don't know who's going to cover Kyle Pitts. I don't know if you move a corner, Darius Slay or Steve Nelson, maybe one of those guys. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
You know, the other thing is if you take somebody and put them on Pitts, obviously you got to figure out who's going to cover Calvin Ridley, right? You know, and how do they shift over for that? And that gets into the question about the Jonathan Gannon defense. We know one thing for sure: the wide nine's done. There's no more Jim Schwartz defense here. But the Gannon defense, the Eagles even admitted they were running vanilla stuff in the preseason. They were running vanilla stuff in some of these joint practices. So, you know, there's a lot of question marks in terms of what exactly this defense is going to look like, and they're going to have to do it without being 100%.
Right, and if you can't put pressure on Matt Ryan, you're going to lose. That's going to be That's going to be the whole key to the defense. They have to be able to rattle Matt, force him into some mistakes, make him make some throws he doesn't want to make. But if the front four doesn't get there, and Matt has all day to look for Kyle Pitts and Ridley and what have you, then it's going to be a long day. They absolutely have to put some pressure on him to win this game, I think.
Which makes me wonder, Dave, is there a possibility that this game could be just a shootout because of the fact that we know Atlanta's defense is basically a bunch of guys like me running around out there?
Yeah, I mean, that's everybody's like pointing to the fact that the Eagles are going to be able to light up the scoreboard. Well, who's to say the Falcons aren't going to do the same thing?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not so sure the Eagles' defense is particularly stout. I mean, they're not going to remind anybody of the Doomsday defense or the Steel Curtain or anything. So, but I mean, again, as we've talked about, the potential is there. I mean, you have like Josh Sweat is coming off a pretty good season last year. Seems to have really blossomed this season in training camp in the preseason, plus Fletcher Cox, plus Brandon Graham, what have you. Linebackers seem a little bit better, although that remains to be seen if that's going to translate into the regular season. And, everybody talks about Darius Slay being that shutdown corner. I don't think he shut many people down last year. That was just my observation. It seemed like whenever he went up against a big-time receiver, he came out on the short end of it. So, there's plenty of challenges that await the Eagles. It's going to be this. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 28-24 game or something like that.
28-24. I'm thinking more like 35-30 kind of thing. Honestly,
yeah, man, it could be. Yeah, yeah.
That's just me. Dave, with all that being said, obviously, the first week of the NFL season, a lot of questions for a lot of teams. And I know that for the NFC East overall, a lot of people have a lot of opinions. In fact, if every sports book has the odds plus for every team. All the teams, there's no prohibitive favorite. So how does Dave Weinberg handicap the NFC East this year?
Oh, boy. I'm pretty much in the same boat as everybody else. I think it's a two-team race between Dallas and Washington. With Dak Prescott back, I think that makes Dallas, the prohibitive favorite probably, although Washington's defense is just outstanding. I mean, they've got talent up and down the line, and defense can carry you a long way in this league. So if Ryan Fitzpatrick can deliver that Fitz magic that he's been known to do, then maybe Washington pulls it out. But I do think the Giants and the Eagles are a step behind both of those teams. That being said, who's to say that one of those teams doesn't step up too? And everybody's always an injury away from everything turning upside down. But as of now, I would say Dallas and Washington are the teams to beat. I would probably favor the Cowboys just by a smidge.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you, Dave. I feel like those are the two teams. I would just say this about the Giants. I have zero faith in them. I feel like
rightfully so, yeah.
their offensive line has not been addressed the entire time Dave Gettleman's been the GM. Daniel Jones, I'm still waiting for that moment that we see him take that next step. And by the way, they now have 200. They have 200 wide receivers and no offensive linemen. So, of course, how many times are we going to see guys argue about touches on the sideline?
That's true too. You didn't see Daniel Jones take that step against the Eagles though last year.
You mean the step where he fell on his face?
Yeah, he fell on his face after an 80-yard run, but yeah, so.
He took a lot of steps and then he fell. So.
Yep, that's true.
Dave Weinberg joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, speaking of the NFC East, tomorrow night we get to see the debut of Corey Clement in a Cowboys uniform.
No, bro, I didn't even know he signed with them. I knew he got cut by the Giants. I didn't know what happened to him after.
Yeah,
he's so Cowboys now.
Yeah, I think Corey's trying to go for the quad there. I think
the entire NFC East.
Because he's already got 3 on his resume. Why not go for 4 by the end of his career at this point?
Yeah, really. I mean, I'm a big fan of Corey's, dating back to his days at Glassboro High. And it was him and Wes Hills and Wildwood were like the elite running backs in South Jersey back then. So I've always followed him, and it was an incredible story in 2017. Making the team as an undrafted free agent and then having 100 yards receiving in the Super Bowl. I don't know what really happened with him, though. I mean, I know injuries were a factor, but it just didn't seem like he was able to recapture the magic that he had as a rookie for whatever reason. And hopefully maybe another new start he'll be able to bring some of that back and have a nice career for himself.
Well, I don't think he ever got a fair shot with the Giants anyway, because he was in a crowd. He was in a crowded backfield. There's a ton of backs up there. Whereas with Dallas, he's now the number 3 back / special teams guy, and we know that Dallas literally is basically top heavy. It's Zeke, it's Tony Pollard, and then anybody who watched Hard Knocks knew that apparently the guy who was competing for the 3rd running back slot was a guy who lost his contacts in the middle of the game, and then he had to go find his glasses. So the Cowboys they probably needed Corey more than Corey needed them at this point.
Yeah. I'm kind of wondering what happened with him with the Eagles, though. They seemed pretty high on him for a couple of years, and then he kind of I don't know if he got in the doghouse of Howie Roseman or what have you, but I think that he would have been a pretty nice option for them to have this year. But I guess they felt differently.
Well, listen, Dave, it gets back to a question I've had a lot because of last season. It's starting to feel more and more that, maybe Doug was so obsessed with some of the veterans on those teams that, for example, the fact that they kept bringing Jason Peters back and, they put Alshon Jeffrey out there instead of Travis Fulgham, and, the fact that Jordan Howard was getting all those reps.
Get to the phone right now, but if you
do you think that was Doug or Howie, though?
That's what I don't know, because Howie turned around at the press conference, remember, back in April, and he said that he's looking forward to the guys they drafted working with the new coaching staff, almost insinuating that, something was wrong with Doug. And, I don't know. Doug a lot of times kept saying how much he loves play calling and how he wouldn't want to do this. He wasn't going to be able to call plays. So there's a part of me that wonders, did Doug love the play calling aspect more than the head coach aspect?
I'm probably, I don't know. I just have this, I have the utmost respect for Doug Pederson. I think the Eagles made a gigantic mistake by letting him go. He won them the freaking Super Bowl. I think I personally just think he's a tremendous coach. I'm willing to chalk up last year to just, a series of disasters starting when he himself had COVID. But I'm a big believer in Doug Pederson, and I can't bring myself to insult the guy or to demean him in any way. I just can't.
Well, I'm not trying to insult or demean him. I'm just thinking out loud, with you and the rest of the audience, because I feel like a lot of times I mentioned this to Mike Gill earlier off the air. We live in a world where everybody wants a boogeyman. Everybody wants a fall guy, right? And
that's true. Yeah.
Right. And so at the end of the day, we don't always take the time to maybe piece through all the layers at times. And so it's like,
true.
Well,
True.
People point to Lori or Howie for why Doug isn't here, but no one ever asked the question, did Doug maybe get tired of being here? What was Doug's role in some of the things that happened? I don't know what Doug's role was on draft day. I don't know what Doug's role was in the offseason. I don't know. I know that, we traded for Gardner Minshew. Is it a coincidence that David Caldwell now works in the Eagles front office and he has Howie's ear and he's the guy who drafted Minshew? How do we know that how many of the things the Eagles actually do are actually Howie versus people getting in Howie's ear telling him what they think.
That's true. I think maybe Doug's not here is because he wanted more say. Like everybody talks about him wanting to retain his coaching staff and promote certain people, and Jeffrey Lurie, for whatever reason, was dead set against it, and that seemed to be the common theme as to why he was not here. I don't know if that's really true or not, but I think Doug, I thought he had earned the right to be more involved in the decision making. Like I said, there's a Lombardi trophy in their trophy case because of him, and I just don't. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. I don't know anybody's really sure about exactly what went on, but I'm going to I'm going to put the blame more on the front office than I am on Doug Pederson.
And listen, I don't think that's a bad take because of the fact you just mentioned the Lombardi Trophy. You know who didn't get a Lombardi Trophy? Not Dick Vermeil, not Buddy. Well, Buddy Ryan didn't even win a playoff game. Not
right.
Andy Reid. Andy Reid got there, but they didn't win it. So, there's a point in time where you got to look at Doug Pederson differently in terms of the fact that you had all these coaches come through here, and everybody loves Vermeil and everybody loves Buddy Ryan, right? But it's
yeah, absolutely.
Guess what? It was Doug, who people made fun of that first year because he couldn't complete a sentence at times. He's the one who led them to the ring.
Correct.
Dave,
we agree.
Yes, we agree on that. See, well, listen, we try to find common ground here on Game
Absolutely.
Night on 97.3 ESPN. I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I at least try to be objective here.
There you go.
Dave, before I let you go, two more things. One, I got to admit, I was not fully sure who Patrick Cantley was before this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And
same.
And he's if you didn't, I'm definitely not going to. But I'm just wondering, is it good for golf that a guy like him wins, who's not like a name brand, at least in terms of the casual viewer?
I don't know if it's good or bad. My problem is with the system itself. I don't get why he entered the tournament with a 2-stroke lead because of what he did last week. It just seems to me that it should be everybody still like the final whatever there was in the PGA Championship or the FedEx Cup Championship. Everybody should be starting on an even playing field in my mind. I don't know why he gets an advantage just because of the point system, what have you, going into the tournament. I don't know if it's good or bad that he won. He deserved it, and most people relate to the Bryson DeChambeaus, I guess, or the Phil Mickelsons or what have you, the more popular guys. But Cantley's very well regarded in within the PGA as a top level golfer. He may not be a household name, but he is outstanding, and he proved himself over this past weekend. It's just I'm not getting the ranking system that they use, though. That's my biggest beef with it.
Yeah, listen, when I had to spend about 10 minutes of my life figuring out why guys were getting where they were getting with those strokes and everything, that's when I was like, all right, the PGA tried too hard to be the smartest person in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, which they've been known to do. Yeah, that's the truth.
And then one more before I let you go, Dave. Your school, App State, very nice win over the first weekend, and they are accountable for one of my 2 losses on the college football season this year. I'm 10-2, and I thought that East Carolina would have a closer game.
What?
I thought they'd have a closer game, but I was wrong, and I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong on the radio. I wasn't sure that Chase Bryce in his first start with App State would look that good, but I was wrong. He actually looked better than I thought he could ever look, honestly. So maybe there's something in
Miami. We're coming for you.
Listen, maybe there's something in the water at App State when it comes to these quarterbacks. They feel like they've had 3 or 4 guys roll through there in the last 5 years, and they all just sling it. They all just sling it, Dave.
There you go. And we're going down to the U this Saturday, and we're going to put another beat down on somebody.
Well, be careful. That guy De'Ara King's really good. So.
Okay.
You're so unfazed. That's great. Dave Weinberg at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Check out his extra point columns over at 973ESPN.com. Don't forget the podcast Tequila and Touchdowns with Dave Weinberg. He joins us each and every Wednesday here on Game Night for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, always appreciate you joining the show. We'll catch up next week.
Anytime, Josh. Thanks for having me as always. I appreciate it.